Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here and welcome back to the railway. I've reviewed quite a few N-scale locomotives now, but not all that much N-scale rolling stock. So today I'm going to try some N-scale coaches by Dapol. So this is going to be my first standalone review of some N-scale rolling stock, and the coaches I've picked up are these. These are the LNER Gresley Teak coaches in N-scale, and the full price of these is £34.99, that's the RRP, and I'm not too sure what to make of that price because obviously it does seem like quite a lot of money for what are very, very small coaches. But equally, if these have the same details as, let's say, a 00 scale version of this coach, then £35 seems very reasonable indeed. So I will be interested to see just how detailed these coaches are. Obviously, most likely they are going to be a little bit simpler than what we might see in 00 scale. However, I didn't pay the full RRP for these, as you might expect. I picked these up from Hatton's just before they closed down in the sale for £25 each. And that does seem quite reasonable. So hopefully for £25, these will be good value. But let's find out, let's see what these are like. They are surprisingly old. Apparently these first came out in 2007, making these 17-year-old coaches. I only found that out since buying them. So very interested to see what these are like. I suppose there is a danger that they are quite dated now, like that Britannia I looked at. But anyway, let's find out. Let's see what these are like. So as you can see, I picked up a pair of these. I've got two of them, and I wanted to review these now because I've actually got another N-scale loco waiting to be reviewed, which I'm hoping will be a good match with these coaches. So there's a little clue for an upcoming review. I'm sure you can probably guess which loco that might be, but today we're just going to focus on these coaches, and we'll take a look at this one first. So if I show you the end of the box, you can see which one this is. So it's 2P-011-210. It is the N-gauge Gresley coach in the LNER Teak, and this is a brake composite number 5547, and the minimum curve radius is R1, which is pretty good. I can't imagine many people running tighter curves than that. So hopefully quite versatile coaches. But anyway, there's not too much to see on the back of the box. So let's pull the coach out and let's see what this is like. Yeah, this seems to unpack very similar to some of Dapol's other rolling stock. So I'm going to pull this little foam insert out just to check we've got no paperwork or anything. No, we haven't. So let's see what accessories we get in a little bag, and this appears to be some couplings, so possibly alternative couplings. They look like knuckle couplings, so probably quite realistic actually if you were to use them. And presumably we've got the slightly less realistic but more convenient couplings already fitted to the coach, but let's find out. So, being quite careful because the coach is quite loosely located into this sleeve. I think I might be better to just push the coach out from under it. Alright, and very gently, let's lift this up. Alright, so it's a pretty lightweight coach, it must be said, although there does seem to be a lot of detail on this, quite surprisingly. Yeah, there's a lot of separately fitted detail on here. There's separate pipework along the chassis, lots of separate detailing on the bodywork as well. The decoration looks quite interesting really. It's kind of got a pinkish hue to it around the windows, which I don't know if that's dreadfully convincing or not. I'll have to look at some pictures, but I've never noticed a pinkish hue before to these Teaks, but I'll find that out and get back to you on that. Yeah, actually the complexity of these coaches is quite a bit more than I was expecting, especially considering that these first came out in 2007. In fact, I think I'm going to go back and double check that date because there's quite a bit of complexity here, including these kinematic couplings. I'd actually be surprised if these features were a thing back in 2007. So maybe this is just ahead of its time, maybe it's been updated. I'm not too sure, but that is quite impressive actually, especially for £25. Anyway, let's have a look at the other coach. which is a little bit different, as you can see. So let me show you the end of the box of this one. So this one is 2P-011-014. It's an N-gauge Gresley coach like the other was in the LNER Teak, except this one is a third class and it's number 10044. So let's pull this one out. Similar packaging I'd expect, and presumably the accessories are the same. So just some alternative couplings. I'm going to unpack this in the same way because that seemed to work well before. I'm going to be extra careful though, because these coaches are much more detailed than I was expecting them to be. Alright. And here it is. There you go, the third class. So this is not a brake, so it's got windows going all the way along. And it's also got the vestibules on the ends as well, which the 00 Teaks I reviewed not long ago actually didn't have. So these are the kind of full-length ones, I suppose. But yeah, beautifully decorated, well detailed. From a distance, at least, this looks fantastic. Let me pull in the other one. Yeah, it looks like a really nice pair. So yeah, great looking from a distance, but how do they look up close? Well, we'll find out in just a second. But first of all, here's a bit of background on these coaches in real life. Nigel Gresley was responsible for many different LNER coach designs, which were produced between 1923 and 1942. And these coaches obviously were made famous by their varnished teak finish. Coaches like these received this livery prior to the 1948 nationalisation, but later on after that the coaches were painted into more conventional BR liveries, including a maroon, which kind of masks how elegant they used to look in the varnished teak finish. Countless examples were built in total, but some 38 examples remain in existence to this day. So there it is, up close and personal for you, Dapol's Gresley Teak in N-scale. And I've chosen to show you the brake up close because this is the slightly more complex coach, although obviously most of the features are identical on both coaches. So first things first, I have double checked the dates, and sure enough, according to the Hatton's directory, these coaches were indeed introduced for the first time in 2007. And like I say, that seems quite unbelievable given the complexity of these coaches, as we'll see. What I don't know though is whether these coaches have been upgraded over the years. Maybe that's a possibility, but regardless of that, the coaches we see today are really quite impressive in their complexity. The first thing I want to talk about though is the decoration, because the way it's been done is quite interesting. So here's how I think it works. So the coaches have a base colour to them, and it's this kind of pinkish brown, and we'll talk more about the colour of that later on. And then on top of that base colour, they've got this kind of dot matrix of yellow paint, I suppose, which I thought to start with was UV printed, but looking up close, it just looks like tampo printed dots, and then the size and density of those dots is used to create the sort of tiki texture, which is quite clever. I do think up close the quality of this finish isn't fantastic, and more modern techniques do produce a more detailed finish than this. But from a distance it looks absolutely fine. Up close though, yeah, not the best. The other printed details though, such as the numbers on the doors and the running numbers and such, these are not done with a dot matrix or anything. These seem to be traditionally tampo printed, which looks quite a bit better. Same is true of the lining and such, the yellow lining around the windows and the side of the coach bodies. This all seems to be traditionally tampo printed, although the consistency of the lining really isn't the best. It's a little bit bitty, not the highest quality lining I've seen, even at N-scale. So I think my conclusion is, from a distance, the decoration looks great. Up close though, you can really see the cracks. Now, about the base colour, I think this looks a little bit too light and a little bit too pink for my taste. Now, I could be wrong about that because I'm not an expert on the prototype, but from the teak coaches that I've seen and also from the photos that I've seen, I don't think the colour should be quite this light. From what I've seen, it should be quite a bit darker than that. But please comment down below if you've got thoughts on that and let me know what you think. Yeah, for me, that's not the most convincing. The roof though looks absolutely fine. Yeah, that seems to be just about spot on. A kind of creamy off-white. Yeah, that looks good. In terms of construction, yeah, these are quite lightweight. They come in at just 23 grams, which is about the same weight as a 00 scale open wagon. So not a lot to them. Hopefully there won't be any instability on the track because of that. In terms of detail though, they are incredibly impressive. So look at the bogies to start with. Very, very detailed bogies with metal wheels, and the wheels appear to have pickups on them as well through the axles. So whether this model's got lights or not, I'm not sure, but it certainly looks as though it's ready to accept lights if you wanted to fit them. Because of that pickup arrangement though, we do have these plastic axles which do show signs of stress. Yeah, not my favourite wheel design. That doesn't really scream quality, does it? But the bogies themselves are extremely detailed, and this moulding on the lower part of the bogies looks incredibly detailed. Very, very impressive. There's quite a bit of underframe detail as well, as you can see, including the brake rigging, which I was quite surprised to see modelled. And then on the coach body itself, there is a lot going on here. We've got the separate handrails around the guard's door, which are indeed separately fitted. That's quite impressive. We've got the footboards on both sides, which I don't think are separately fitted, but they are quite effectively painted so that they stand out quite nicely. We've got separately fitted pipework along the other side of the coach, as well as some quite complex separately fitted parts on each end, including the corridor connector, which is painted black, and again the moulding on these parts is really quite awesome. The door handles and such are just a part of the moulding. That's understandable given how tiny they are, but they have been painted so that they stand out, which is good to see. And then up on the roof of the coaches, we've got some great moulding. These vents look absolutely excellent, and these little rails here are even separately fitted. It's quite astounding how many of these parts are separate, and look at these tiny little parts. Actually quite terrifying how fragile they look, but for the moment they are intact. The buffers are a slight disappointment. Obviously they're not going to be sprung or anything, but they are quite clearly plastic and then just painted to look metallic, and they're not as effective as some N-scale buffers that I've seen. Then in terms of the couplings, yeah, we've got your standard N-scale couplings fitted, and these are kinematic, which is pretty impressive, and I'll give those a test later on. Up next, we've got the glazing, which looks absolutely excellent. A lot of the windows do have separate printed details on them, whether that be just the bars going across or the actual signage, which is there on some of the windows. That's amazing. And then because this brake has a corridor inside it, I'll show you some of that. There is quite a lot of interior detail here, including this door, which is very, very intricate. And then in the passenger compartments, there are detailed seats. None of this is really painted or picked out, but the fact that the interior is here at all is pretty impressive in my book. So there you have it. That is a close look at the Dapol Gresley Teak in N-scale. There's a heck of a lot of detail to these, which makes the relatively low price I paid of £25 really quite surprising. On the other hand though, you can kind of understand why these would be cheap, because they are very light and plasticky. And while they do look absolutely fine from a distance, up close the decoration I think could have been better. But anyway, let me pull the N-scale layout up here and we'll couple these up to a locomotive and see how well they perform. So my original master plan for this review was that I was going to use the Dapol Britannia to haul these coaches, as that makes a little bit more sense than the pannier tank. But because the Dapol Britannia was basically unusable, I have actually had to go with the pannier tank for this review. So I'm aware that that's unprototypical, but like I said earlier on, soon I will have a more suitable loco for these coaches, and when I do review that, these coaches will be back again for that review. But for now, we've got the pannier. In terms of how free rolling these Teaks are, they're pretty darn good actually. Because these coaches have those kind of axle-based pickups, it's almost like they're running in metal bearings, which makes them nice and free. And also, obviously, you can add lights to these coaches without increasing the drag by adding pickups. So that's really, really good. The two coaches coupled together, okay, but how is this loco going to get on coupling up to them? So let's find out. Not very good. Now that's confusing, because is it the coaches or the loco that are responsible for that? Let's pull them forwards a bit just to make sure the coaches are free from the curve. The pannier is not the most reliable. But yeah, so that's not really working. I guess I could pull the Britannia in just to test and see whether it is the sort of pannier that's responsible for this or the coaches, but with a bit of coaxing I have been able to get those to couple. So with that, let's pull forwards and let's see how the coaches actually run. So a little nudge for the pannier. Might have to try and clean the wheels on that because it seems a bit unreliable. So there we go, it's a bit of a strange sight with the Great Western pannier there, but as you can see on the broader radius curves, no problem at all with the Teaks, and they actually look fantastic. All of those details are popping, and I think it's well worth having all of those handrails and different parts actually separately fitted, because it just makes the models that much more impressive. So yeah, they seem to work absolutely fine, nice and free rolling. Bit of a question mark over the couplings, but certainly once coupled up, they seem to be running fine. So let's see how they get on over the points. A little bit unsure as to how this is going to go because of how light the coaches are, but if there are no problems over the points, then yeah, I can give them a good performance score, I reckon. So let's give that a try. Alright, let's open these up, see what happens. Yeah, seems pretty good. Those kinematics seem to work perfectly. It's a nice smooth motion on them. Backwards. Yeah, they do seem super reliable. Let's be mean and go a bit faster over them. Let's try about 60 or 70. Yeah, look at that, no issues. And in reverse, let's go even quicker. Yeah, absolutely solid as a rock. So I was a bit concerned that these coaches would be like that Britannia, i.e. unable to stay on the track. Turns out they're not. They're absolutely spot on and reliable as anything. So super impressive. Performance is a big thumbs up. So with that, let's do some ratings on these Dapol Teaks. I've given the level of detail 4-star because frankly it's amazing. Given that these were first introduced in 2007, I was really taken aback by the interior detail and the number of separately fitted parts on the bodies. Even the moulded detail in places like the bogies was way beyond what I was expecting. The decoration doesn't look that great up close, as you saw from those close-ups. It's a little bit spotty. These are much better viewed from a distance in terms of decoration, which is a real shame because the actual detail on the coaches looks superb even up close. So it's not the full shebang, as it were, but I have given it 4-star. The detail's pretty impressive. Performance though, I've given 5-star. Now I had a slight coupling issue when I was demonstrating these being coupled to the pannier, but I've tried coupling these coaches up to some other N-gauge wagons and a couple of other N-scale locos, and no problems whatsoever. It only seems to be the pannier that was struggling, so I've deemed it not the coach's fault, so I've not knocked it down for that. They're nice and free rolling, they couple well, they handle the points and curves without derailing or wobbling or anything like that, so it's definitely a 5-star on performance. The quality though, I've given 3-star. Now, the way in which the separate parts have been fitted is faultless, there's no visible glue or anything like that. However, they are quite fragile thanks to the small parts, and the packaging wasn't really the best. Pulling them out of that foam was a little bit scary. They're also quite plasticky, no die cast on these, which leaves them pretty lightweight really. The lining is also not that great up close, a little bit patchy in places, not the greatest. I think that could have been better, so the quality for me is more middle of the road. Value for money though, I've got to say, can't really fault these. Yes, £34.99 as an RRP is quite expensive for such a small coach, but once you actually get it and you're looking at it, you can see why these are not dirt cheap. Having said that, at the retailers they are quite a bit cheaper than £34.99, and I got mine for £25 each on sale, which is absolutely fine. That would be 5-star. So I've split the difference between my ratings for the RRP and the retailer price and given it 4.5-star. Yeah, if you can find these at a decent discount, they're absolutely worth it. So overall then, that is 8.02 out of 10, or a grade of C. If the decoration looked a bit better up close and perhaps the quality was a little bit higher, these would easily be deserving of a B or even an A. So into the N-gauge rolling stock logbook, which is a new logbook. I've not really done any other standalone N-gauge rolling stock reviews, so this is currently at the top, but I will be reviewing more N-gauge rolling stock as time goes on, and I'm quite excited to see how some of that will shape up. So watch this space, lots more coming soon. For now though, thank you so much for tuning into this review. Please do comment down below and let me know what you think about these. Have I been too harsh? Have I been too forgiving? Please do let me know. And do you have any of these coaches? Do you perhaps have an earlier release of these from closer to 2007? And if so, was the level of detail as good as this back then? Did they have those kinematic couplings? Or is that a later addition? I'd be really interested to know that. But like I say, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again very, very soon for some more reviews. Alright, cheers folks, you take care.